yesterday I was doing a little project, and that project was creating a TBR jar. So what's special about this TBR jar is that all of the books in here are basically backlist books. So a little backstory. I have been on Bookstagram for a few years now, and when I first started Bookstagram, I was just getting into YA, specifically like YA fantasy, and there were a lot of backlist YA fantasy as well as YA fantasy that was like newer and coming out and being talked about. And I fell victim to buying a lot of backlist YA fantasy series as well as ones that were coming out. I also fell victim to buying the series in its entirety rather than buying one and seeing if I liked it or not. So I was just under the assumption I was gonna love everything, apparently. To be a little fair to myself, over the years of starting Bookstagram, I have moved 4 different times, and in each of those moves I have unhauled books, quite a few books. Recently I think I unhauled almost 200 books. I had 4 or 5 boxes full of books. And this could spark a conversation about consumerism within the book community. I know this is a conversation that has been going around, and I would feel weird to not address it as I'm doing a video that is me choosing from hundreds of different books that I have purchased. So what I will say about it is I think that there can be a balance. I think that you can find a balance of buying books, borrowing books, getting used books. I think the larger conversation that I was seeing was surrounding Amazon specifically, and I have a lot of feelings about that because while I don't use Amazon very often, I did in the past because I didn't have access to a bookstore. The only bookstore in my entire town was Target and Walmart. Like, those were my bookstores because they had books in them and I would just buy whatever they had. So because in high school I became such an avid reader and a quick reader, I would read up whatever I was interested in at Target and Walmart, and I took to Amazon to getting books. Later I ended up moving to a place that did have a bookstore, and it was an independent bookstore, so I solely relied on them and Barnes & Noble for my book needs. But I think I have like mixed feelings because I grew up in an area where I did not have access to books. And the library that we had was so tiny, and then my high school library, they fired the librarian and shut the library down. So I just have like a complicated relationship with Amazon because I don't rely on it personally, and I think that that's a privilege. It's not like I don't use it, but I don't solely use it. And you know, it brings up the conversations of like access and international access to things. So these are all conversations, but I think in the realm of like buying a lot of books that you don't need, I don't know, I go back and forth with that as well, because there are some people who solely rely on libraries and there are some people who have a combination of both, which I think I'm that person. And then I think there are people who just like to own their books. And I think that if you're scared that you're not going to be able to build an audience, like say on Bookstagram, because you only get library books because you can't afford to buy a ton of books, just know that there are people who will love your content. And I think there's an audience for every type of reader and consumer. I'm not contributing a ton to the conversation that hasn't been said, but I do think that there can be a balance, and I think it's important to strike a balance. And still, I am somebody who purchases books regularly because sometimes I just really want to own specific books that I've loved or I think that I will love. But getting books from the library has saved me from making this mistake in the past, which was just buying full-on series without ever knowing if I was going to like that book, that author, whatever. So I don't really do that anymore. I won't say I don't do it because I have the entirety of, you may be able to see it here, I have the first 2 City of Brass books. I don't remember what the series is called. And I almost just bought the 3rd one the other day. So I can't say that I don't still do it, but I definitely don't do it like I did in the past. So now on to the video concept. This idea is nothing new. It's just that I really want to read my backlist titles. So when I say backlist, I know that that usually means anything prior to 2020. But for me, my backlist is anything that I haven't bought this year, aside from a few. There are a few on my list that came out in 2020, and I put them in here because I've had them since the beginning of 2020 and I haven't even thought to pick them up. So, but for the most part, all of these books are books that I purchased prior to 2020. So there are a few books that I currently have in my possession that I bought this year that were published well before 2020, but they are ones that I'm really interested in reading like now-ish. A few of the ground rules that I have for myself in this project is that whatever I pull out of this jar, I have to read it. I can't just be like, oh no, I don't want to read that, and then put it back. I have to read it. Secondly, if it is a series and I read that book and I like it, I have to read the second or third one, depending on how long the series is. Some of these are the beginning of a series. Some of them are a few books into a series and that I just haven't gotten around to finishing. So it depends on where it is at in the series. But if it's a series and there's a book that comes after it or a few books that come after it and I liked it, I have to continue reading it so that I can read that full backlist. Then the other rule is that I am allowed to DNF these books. I'm really bad at DNFing, that's why I'm giving myself this rule. If I don't like it in the first 100, 150 pages, I don't need to read it. And I'm saying that for me, not you. I'm saying it solely for me. I don't need to read it. And then in the end, if I don't like the book or if I DNF the book, I'm just gonna donate the book. And then depending on the month and what I have planned to read and how I'm feeling, I would like to do this 2 times a month. I know there are some people who just right out the gate when they do their TBRs, they pick 2 books and that's just part of their TBR. I didn't want to do that because I am a moody reader and I didn't want to like put a bunch of stuff on my TBR that I wasn't ever going to get to because I'm really bad at sticking to TBRs. So if I just do this and then I pick up the book immediately, I'm forced. I'm really trying to pump myself up for this. I'm acting like I'm not excited to do this. I am. I just am really intimidated. So without further ado, I will stop talking. Let's shake this up and pick the first book and then I will vlog it for you. The Last Magician. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. So I chose The Last Magician by Let's figure out what this is about because I don't remember. To sum it up, basically in modern day New York, magic is all but extinct. There are remaining few who have an affinity for magic. Esta is a talented thief. She's been raised to steal magical artifacts. So basically she's going back in time to steal some magical artifacts. I genuinely didn't remember what this was and I don't know if I even had a clue when I bought it, if I knew exactly what it was, but this actually sounds pretty cool. I don't always love time travel stories, depends on how they're done. I do really like anything with like magic and magicians and wizards, so we'll see how I like this one. Let's see how many pages it is. It's 498 pages, so that's a chunk. That also means, because this is a series, that I have to read the second one, if I like it. Hi, I'm sitting here reading. I have hit 110 pages into The Last Magician, and I like it. I do. It's, I actually thought I wasn't gonna like this book, to be honest, because I bought it so long ago. I say so long ago, but I think I bought it like 3 years ago. So genuinely, I didn't think I was actually gonna like this book very much, just because I haven't grown out of YA. I don't want to say that, but I have grown out of certain YA tropes and writing styles. One thing I think I didn't expect is I knew that there was time travel in this, and I knew that a chunk of this book takes place in the early 1900s. I think it said it was 1902. So I knew that a chunk of this book takes place in the past, but I think more of this book is going to be in the past than in the present, which is fine with me because in movies and books, I do like the 1900s, 1920s vibe. Obviously, it's glamorized, it's whitewashed. It's not a good time for many people to be alive. So when I say I like the vibe of it, I just like the flapper aspect of the 1900s. And with that being said, I do think that this book will address some of the issues that were happening in the early 1900s. It seems like Lisa Maxwell is not afraid to like talk about these things, but I don't know how deep she's going to get into it. But I am under the impression right now that the majority of this book is taking place in the past. But I did want to just update you guys and let you know that I do really like this book so far, and the characters are kind of whatever. Like, so far I don't have any attachment to any of the characters, but it's early on and you're getting to know everybody. But I will say old Lisa Maxwell is not afraid to pull punches right out the gate, because in 100 pages, like 2 people have died and somebody else got attacked, and you're just like, okay. If you hear background noise, I'm sorry, but they're gonna be doing construction like all day, so it's not gonna stop. Watch, it stops. Oh, now somebody's mowing their lawn. Maybe I'll just update you later. Okay, so the noises mostly went away. What I was going to say was that I am on page 232, and I'm still really liking this, but it's not really even a complaint. I'm not complaining about it. It's just like an observation about young adults, I guess. I think it's interesting that the characters are said to be 17, 18, 19, which in some cases is like on the older side of young adults, I guess. This just doesn't. It feels like she was told that this wouldn't be good as an adult novel, and to age down the characters but keep the plot kind of the same. In a lot of ways this has a YA feel, and I foresee a specific romance popping up in this book. I definitely see that happening, and it would fit the conventions of YA, in my opinion, in my oh so humble opinion. But a lot of the other stuff happening, and the way that the characters are, and the way that they interact and speak, and it's just not, it doesn't fit the age. The other thing is I kind of hate, and I think this was something that bothered me in Six of Crows, and this is the best example I can give for this, because it's the one that like immediately came to my mind when I thought about a few characters in this book. But You know how Casbrecker he's obviously been through so much in his life at a young age, right? Which has hardened him, and then he had to live on the streets and learn how to use and utilize what he had to survive. So he grew up a little bit faster, right? But a part of me is like, is that enough to make a character seem like a 40-year-old, late 30s, early 40s, whatever, beyond man who has lived so much life and been through so much shit, especially in the streets and in gangs, and has faced a lot of adversity or whatever? Like, is that enough to make a character that's only 19, which is what's happening in this book, be the leader of a bunch of people and have this gained authority even beyond the people that he's leading? Like, there have been moments when one of the other characters who doesn't know him, she just entered into his crew and she's observing things about him, and one of the things that she observes is that he has like a lot of authority, and people respect him a lot, and even if they don't respect him, they fear him, so therefore they show him respect. And I'm like, he's 19, so it just doesn't make sense in my mind. Or maybe I'm an ageist, I don't know. I think it just doesn't feel extremely genuine, but I have to remind myself this is fantasy, this is different, whatever. It just feels weird whenever they mention age, because every other time I'm picturing somebody who's much older and has lived like a really hard life. And it's not to say that like Casbrecker as my first example, or this guy and his name is Dolph, or that this guy Dolph hasn't lived a hard life even at a young age, because that's very much something that happens. But I just don't know that they would be at the stage that they're being portrayed at such a young age. I don't know. So I'm like halfway through this book, and I just need to know, has anybody heard of consent in this book? Anyone? No? Okay. There's just been like multiple situations where, and it's really one character. I don't know why I'm saying like, has anybody heard of consent in this book? Because it's one character, and he continuously kisses this other character, and like, he never asks, right? And he kind of does it for what he thinks are justifiable reasons. Maybe it's because this book is set in 1902 that like a character would do something like this. I mean, a character would fucking do this in 2020. What am I talking about? Trump is our president. All I know is just like the consent thing is just ask. It's me, your girl. Really bad lighting. Also, I got this really cool sweater. It says, read Latinx authors. I'd like to get a few of these types of sweatshirts, like read Black authors, read Indigenous authors, fucking read diverse authors. Okay, but seriously, the reason I'm updating you in this really bad lighting is because I am 340 pages in. In my last update, I literally asked, why doesn't anyone ask for consent? And truly, I was only talking about one specific character who keeps kissing another character without ever asking. And finally, there's a scene where the character who keeps getting kissed, she kind of does the same thing to him. So it's not like, anyway, she calls him out, that's all I'm saying. And I'm gonna read it to you, but I'm gonna keep it like spoiler free. So if this is awkward sentence structure, it's because I'm leaving things out. He says, "You kissed me." She shrugged. "I thought it would be a nice touch." And then he goes, "You should have cleared it with me," he said, rubbing the red spot and making it worse as he smeared it. "Funny, I've thought that every time you've kissed me." Hello? One last thing though, I am not about this romance fully. I'm not fully against it, but I'm not about it because I feel like the characters don't know each other and have no business being together. But I also think that as a plot point, it makes sense. I know I talk shit on romances so much, and I'm so sorry. But I don't fully hate this one. I'm just not fully in support of it right now because they don't know each other. They have no business. They no business. Anyway, I'm having a lot of fun with this book. I just finished. What did I just read? That was so good. I didn't expect that. I thought I was gonna hate this book. Even though I said I thought I was gonna hate this book. Really, I had like 0 to no expectations with the hope that I was going to enjoy it. And I really enjoyed it. I would say in the beginning quarter, I was just kind of whatever about it. Like, you're getting introduced to a lot of different things, a lot of different people. You're trying to keep them straight. There's also like a shift between perspectives in the beginning and time frame because this is a time travel book. I don't know if I said that, but the majority of it takes place in 1902. There's so much more to it. I'm going to do like a final wrap up tomorrow once I think on everything. Well, hello. So as you saw last night, I finished The Last Magician, or The Last Magician if you were me in earlier clips. I really liked this book a lot. Like, I'm going to say it's a solid 4 stars, if not a 4.5, but I'm gonna say 4 stars only because there were little things that didn't make it like a perfect read. First, let me give a brief synopsis that was more than what I read in the beginning. So essentially, it is a time travel book. You have a main character named Esta, and she is a really talented thief. She has an affinity that allows her to kind of manipulate time. So she's tasked to go back in time to save mages by stealing a relic, which is a book that gets destroyed in the current time frame, and they're trying to stop it from being destroyed because they believe that if they get this book that they can destroy the Order and the Brink. And so the Order is a group of magicians, so they're different from mages, who have like corrupt magic, and they have to do like sacrificial type things to even be able to access magic, and they deem themselves like very scholarly and more worthy of magic, and they loathe mages who have natural born magical abilities, which are referred to as affinities in this book, and their magic isn't so blatant. It's something that can be felt between both communities of mages and magicians, but only mages have a real hold over their magic. It's very organic. There's no need to manipulate things in order to access it. They just have access to their magic, and so they're loathed by magicians. And so the magicians build this brink, and this brink is like this magical, I guess, like layer over New York that basically keeps any mage trapped, and you can come into New York as a mage, but you can never come out. And a big part of that was because there were a lot of different mages from all over the world that were kind of rushing to New York, and a lot of the white people who are magicians have a lot of money, believe they built this city from the ground up. They believe that these are vermin and they're not worthy of being in America, basically, and they don't want them to spread everywhere, so they have trapped them in New York. So basically, Esta's going back in time, try to save mages and kind of destroy this brink in the hopes that mages can be free. So because this book heavily parallels immigration issues and assumingly racial issues within the early 1900s, I expected that there was going to be more discussion about these things within this book, and there are hints here and there. I mean, there's a situation where one of the characters is kind of being ostracized and talked down to, and the guy makes a mention of like not knowing if he was Irish or if he was Chinese. And then you have another character who is Japanese, and he has talked a little bit about coming to New York and what that experience has been like for him. And so there's hints of it happening, and I wanted more, but I have started The Devil's Thief. They're already talking about a situation where race was an issue, so it seems that she's going to dive deeper into it, and I'm happy for that because I think that's an important topic to discuss, especially if you're doing a historical alternative fantasy, because technically it's an alternative New York, but it's still following our timeline. The things I liked about it. I don't like to talk about this series on my channel because I don't support this series, I don't support this author, but I just want to say this because I know a lot of people have been looking for alternatives, and I think that this is a great alternative for the Harry Potter world. I think that if you really, really loved Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, if you loved the concept of that, if you liked the character dynamics, the romances that were happening and blossoming, the darkness, the grittiness of it, you're going to love this book. I think that if you enjoy the last couple books in Harry Potter where they're darker, grittier, higher stakes, more people are dying, you will like this book. So the dedication of this book says, for Harry, who is proof that magic is real. So this book is pretty much inspired by the magic and the magical feeling of Harry Potter. But I thought that this book was fast-paced. I thought it had a lot of great twists that I personally didn't see coming. I think that the ending blew my mind and made me excited to read the second book, and it made me excited to finish the series, even though the third book doesn't come out till April of next year. And I mean, I've heard mixed things about The Devil's Thief, so I'm nervous, and it's a lot larger. But I went into this not even thinking I was gonna like it, so if I go into The Devil's Thief also thinking I'm not gonna like it, maybe that's the key. I cracked the code. I hope that you guys like this concept. I hope that it inspires you to read your backlist books if you have been putting off some of the books on your TBR, and let me know if you've read this book. Be mindful of spoilers in the comments if you can. But I would love to talk about it, and I would love to know your thoughts, good, bad, otherwise, and I will talk to you guys later.